All right, I just want to thank everybody for agreeing to be on this panel. I think it's going to be a good discussion. Like I said before, we have some faculty coming in later on, but I'm going to go ahead and start. Whoever wants to go first, don't be shy. Please introduce yourself, your name, title, and your area of focus or the department you work in. Whoever wants to go first. If you
Can go first.
Thank you.
I'm Alissa Haedt-Matt, and I am an associate professor in the psychology department. I'm also the director of the clinical psychology PhD program.
Thank you. Anyone next?
I'll go. I'm Kristina Bauer. I'm an associate professor of psychology and the associate chair of the department.
Georgia?
I guess I'll go. My name is Georgia Papavasiliou. I'm a professor of biomedical engineering with a joint appointment in chemical engineering. And I'm also the associate dean of undergraduate academic affairs for the Armour College of Engineering.
Nikki?
Hi. I was going to go with the psychology group. Hi, I'm Nicole Ditchman. I'm also an associate professor of psychology with my colleagues here, a couple of them. I'm specifically in the division of counseling and rehabilitation science.
Yeah. Seven? Maria or Seebany, whoever wants to go.
I can go. Maria Villalobos. I'm a director of the Master in Landscape Architecture and Urbanism. Happy to be with you all.
Thank you. Yeah.
And hi, everyone. I'm Seebany Datta-Barua. I'm a professor of mechanical and aerospace engineering in the Mechanical Materials and Aerospace Engineering department in the College of Engineering. And yeah, nice to be here with everyone. Thanks.
Thank you. So I kind of want to just delve right in. I don't like how I wrote this question, but I'm going to go with it anyway. How did you end up at Illinois Tech? That sounds really rough. What I meant was what brought you here. How long have you been here? Anything you want to share? But I don't like the way that I posed that question. It just sounds kind of like you just got dropped off in the middle of nowhere. Just decided to make a home. I know what brought you to Illinois Tech. Yeah.
Well, I'll start it off since I was about to follow up with you know, how many years I'd been here. I joined the faculty in 2010. I'd actually in MMAE, I'd actually interviewed right after my PhD in 2008 and didn't get the position. I was sort of I moved here in 2000. Oh, sorry. No. I'm sorry. I'm getting my years all mixed up. 2008, I graduated with my PhD. I had a significant other here, a spouse at that point. And so I applied for a job and did not get it. I worked with a research startup company doing work from home 15 years ago. For a couple of years. And then I went to San Jose State University in 2010, and I worked there for 2 years. And then I interviewed here again because we needed to solve the two-body problem, which is basically two academic partners needing to find positions in the same place in 2012. And that's when I joined the faculty. Sorry. So yeah, it's a long, convoluted process, but it's been here since.
Anyone else?
I guess I'll go next. So I've probably been here longer than anyone because I was an undergrad here. So I came to IIT in 1992 as an undergrad in chemical engineering. And then I did my PhD here in chemical engineering. And then at the time, we also had a two-body problem, two people, and doing their PhDs. And my husband was here at Northwestern, so I ended up staying in the area. I worked at Johnson Polymer for some time in industry, and then I was approached. I was looking for a job in industry, and then or a postdoc elsewhere, and then I was approached by the biomedical engineering department chair at the time, Vince Torito, who knew I had a bioengineering specialization to see, they were just building the department to see if I would be interested in teaching courses or developing courses for the department that was between, chemical kind of and biomedical. And so, and then I said, well, really want to do a postdoc. I don't want to just teach, but I love teaching. So, well, why don't I hire you as a senior lecturer in the department, but you can also do some research with faculty here. And then that's how I started. I was sort of doing 50% research and 50% teaching. And then it transitioned into a tenure track position later on in 2008. And so I joined the department and I'm here now. So that's how I stayed at Illinois Tech.
Love it. EJ, do you want to introduce yourself? And so you can kind of do both questions. We're doing introductions and then talking about how you got to Illinois Tech.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. So nice to meet you. Hold on. Sorry. Nice to meet you. My name is Eun-Jeong Lee. You can call me EJ.
Oh wait, now your audio's out. Your audio went out.
Okay.
Now try. Say something. Wait.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now with them in.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Hi, nice to meet you. I'm sorry I joined a little late. My name is Eun-Jeong Lee. You can call me EJ. I'm a full professor here in the Department of Psychology. I'm here. I joined at IIT 2007. It's been, I don't know, I lost my count. But anyway, I've been here for a while. So the reason why I joined IIT, well, first I came down to IIT. My first impression, to be honest with you, it was not that great because it was winter and it was snowy and still snow piled up, and around the campus building, it looked the same. And I actually, during my interview, I got lost because everything is actually same. And there's no signage, it's not easy to navigate the building. So my impression was that, was not that great. But I love faculty especially in psychology department and especially in rehab division. And that's how I joined IIT. And maybe there is actually the emotional attachment I built up after I got my PhD in Madison, Wisconsin. I don't want to be too far out in like either, East Coast or West Coast. I want to be in the Midwest, and that's probably reason why. And I know Chicago pretty well, so I feel like comfortable being in Chicago, and that's how I landed here. And ever since, I'm still here.
I love it. Thank you. Who wants to go next?
I can jump in since I sort of followed EJ in a way.
Sure.
We both are graduates from University of Wisconsin-Madison. Although she was several years ahead of me, I sort of kind of knew who she was. So when I was on the job market, I was able to reach out and learn a little from her about the Illinois Tech, and realized it was a really great opportunity. My family and I am from the Chicago suburbs, so I know I'm very fortunate to have a job opening when I was up. I came in 2010, and to be able to be located near family is a very big reason why I was clearly set on Illinois Tech, and I've really loved being a part of it ever since.
Thank you. Maria?
Hey everyone. I got here probably not at the best of times because I started on September 2019, so I got to enjoy one semester of life on campus, and then the pandemic hit right at the beginning of my second semester. So yeah, and then it was 2 years that we were online for the most part. At least it was in architecture. So it was a little bit kind of complicated at the beginning to understand, a city that it was in winter and lockdown. And I felt like at a moment where you need the most deep community, that was challenging. But before that, I guess a little bit of background. I'm originally from Venezuela. I have lived in New York for the most part of the 20 years that I've been in the US. came here to go to grad school at Harvard, worked as principal urban designer for the World Trade Center restoration, then did my PhD in Paris, came back and taught at Penn Design. And then I joined the landscape program here 4 years ago. But I think that intensity of being kind of removed in a way from the physical environment and the meeting people and the meeting the city for 2 years in Chicago made it perhaps even more intense to work on the campus and to work on site. And we've been working a lot the past 2 years to create the IIT Arboretum, which, as you saw in the news, happened a couple months ago. And I love working in, like, this is what attracted me about Chicago, the possibility of closing the gap between academia and communities. And when I first came, Mayor Lightfoot was in office and the director of planning was Maurice Cox, and he has been a professor in landscape and architecture for 40 years. So we started teaching together, and that the proposition was to create classes that will at the same time be real projects in the communities, to raise money for them, to give them a timeline, put together teams for it, and be part of ongoing efforts in Inglewood, in Bronzeville, Garfield, in places with neighborhoods we are part of and that we serve. So to me, that was really distinctive, and I think something that makes IIT special. That capacity to, based on the locations and the size and the type of academic environment, I think it makes it a really important kind of place to create proof of concepts on how we, academia and community work can go together really closely.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Who hasn't gone yet? Alyssa, have you gone? Okay, go ahead. Has everyone gone? Did I not miss? Okay,
Kristina, do you want to go first? You want me to too?
No, you can go ahead.
so polite.
I moved to Chicago in 2011 for the last year of my PhD program. We have to do a clinical internship, and I did that at the University of Chicago Medical Center. And I'm from the Midwest, and so Chicago always seemed like the big Midwestern city that was exciting, and there was so much going on. And then when I lived here, I really fell in love with the city. I went on the job market that year. And I'm going to mention this just because it's a little bit of a recurring theme from some other people. I was married also at the time. And so when I was on the job market, thinking about job locations, faculty positions, which were in places where my spouse, who's not an academic, thankfully, because that's even more difficult, but would have job opportunities of his own, was definitely on the top of my mind. So, small college towns weren't going to work as well for us. Again, Chicago seemed like the perfect fit. And when the position was posted for Illinois Tech, I had a couple of faculty mentors whom I trusted and respected, and they knew the faculty at Illinois Tech in the psych department and highly recommended the department, spoke really highly of the clinical program in general. And so I decided to apply. And then I think the thing that clinched it for me when I interviewed for the position was really the students. We went out to lunch, or I went out to lunch with the students during my faculty interview, and all the faculty were great. I think EJ and Nikki were both here. But we interviewed with them. And they were really wonderful, but really, really what clinched it for me in wanting to join the faculty myself was that lunch with the students and just how awesome they were. So I joined the faculty in August of 2012.
Thank you. Kristina, and then we'll have Professor Legate. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I joined Illinois Tech as a visiting assistant in the fall of 2015. I'm not from the Midwest. I have no family here, but my goal was always warm, big city. And I got to a warm, small town in the panhandle of Florida. It was my first academic appointment after I graduated with my PhD. And it was culturally a terrible fit. Um, and so I was actively looking for a way to find a group of colleagues who were more like me, and also to mentor PhD students. And so a little bit similar to Alissa, one of the things that drew me here was were the students and the ability to mentor PhD students. I didn't have a typical interview experience though, because I came in as a visiting assistant and there isn't really an interview process. I interviewed with Roya and she said, please come. And I talked to a few colleagues actually who had worked here before. One who we hired into my PhD program from Illinois Tech. And then the person who was vacating the position here, I had chats with both of them and they spoke super highly of Illinois Tech and the department and the students. And so so I came and it's a dream because I was trying to get to a warm big city, but I did at least get to like a really awesome big city. And so, yeah, that's how I landed here at Illinois Tech.
Awesome. Nikki, do you want to talk a little bit? And you want to introduce yourself and then talk about how you ended up at Illinois Tech?
Hi, Deanna. Thanks for organizing. And sorry I came a little late, everyone. Yeah, I came in 2014, and I don't know, I got a really good vibe, to be honest. Like, I don't know if there's much more to it than I really liked the people I was interviewing with. I thought that everyone was so welcoming, including, you know, the many of the colleagues I have on the call. I remember Nikki and Alissa, both of you, and I'm not sure if I saw everyone. Is EJ here? I remember EJ was super welcoming as well, and also just like really smart colleagues and people, and I just got excited about the possibilities. And so sorry, you can hear my dog Taco in the background. I think the mailman is here, but I thought that, like, I was really honored to get hired for the position. I was coming directly out of grad school and just really excited about the prospect of like being my own boss, essentially, as like a tenure track faculty. And it was just the people, the students and the colleagues that I was going to have here.
Awesome. I want to move into kind of talking about, as you look over your career, and kind of, were there any challenges? And I think somebody spoke about, Nikki just talked about it, like seeing other women who were faculty here, and how did that help? Was there anybody that stood out in your career? What challenges do you still face? I want to know if mansplaining is still a thing. If you still find yourself dealing with that. How is it being a woman in higher education, or a woman working and doing in your field? If anyone wants to start it off. If there's nothing, you can say it's perfectly great. But was there any challenges that anyone like can like pinpoint, like, wow, that was rough, or was it just all smooth sailing?
I can say for me, I think, and I don't know if this is specific to being a woman, there's a lot of men who are great parents and everything, but I do think I have 2 children, and I think for me the biggest challenge has been sort of navigating that, I guess, kind of cliche work-life balance, but it is definitely something continually like feeling guilt either way of not being there enough for kids or not doing as much as I could for career. So I think that's just something I continually work through, and I am appreciative to have other colleagues who I can either, you know, go to and talk with about, both at IIT, but also just in other places. So, but I would say that's my continual struggle. And I'm sure that I'm not alone in that, but I am appreciative to have like some of that mentorship. And I mean, I will say in general, I've felt supported. I think most of the pressures I felt have been more placed on myself by myself than necessarily feeling like I had, you know, higher up people telling me you have to do X, Y, and Z. But I think that, and I would say the other challenge that maybe comes up for, I mean, again, it could come up for men as well, but for women, I think is navigating. I remember first being pregnant and when to disclose that. It's kind of like new information, how soon, but when you're on the semester schedule, we have to plan for fall, and I don't want to leave my colleagues hanging if I'm not ready to like tell them yet, but we got to figure out who's going to fill that position. So I mean, in the grand scheme of things, everything worked out, but I remember just some of that, navigating that was a little tricky.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else? Because I was going to ask that some of you mentioned about having a partner or a spouse in higher education, or when you decided to move here, you had to consider like the family. How big of a role does that play in your career? I mean, just because I've heard people tell students, like, if you want to get your PhD, you're going to have to decide, like, if you're going to have a family, you're going to have to make time for that. How much of that does play a part?
I can say a couple of things about that. It's a family project, and I don't know if it's a specific to a grad education, but I will say that it's probably in any profession, but in my experience in particular, PhD, for example, was possible because I had the most supportive husband, who, you know, made it a priority that we finish that part of our that we completed the mission of that part of our lives. Academic life, without getting into issues of equal pay or things like that, which I will say are some of the most important issues for women in any profession, right? We all know that there is a pay compensation gap between genders. But beyond that, I think it's not to dismiss, I think it's important to have a conversation about that very point. At the same time, I was going to say on the importance of mom and dad and brother and husband. Most sincerely, in my case, it will not be possible if we don't work as a team. So not sure that will be different. Not sure my brother feels different about it. I don't know if it's necessarily a gender related question, but it is true that the balances in those relationships are never 50-50. They are constantly balancing out. But if as a team, I have been the beneficiary of my team at home to make it a priority, perhaps because we all understand the value of training the new generation. But that has been, thank you for that question, because it allows me the space to recognize and attend them, because really without the team, it's not as fun and not as productive, and perhaps not even possible to move forward through that path.
I like that. Anyone else?
Sure, I can share mine. I have some weird story. I got married after I got my master's degree and practice in South Korea. And when I was dating with somebody, my condition is actually I was looking for somebody who can actually, go study abroad with me. Well, I mean, that's how I met my husband. We actually prepare the GRE, all that, test. But as an outcome, I think maybe I got a few offer from some of the university here in the US, but my package is actually a little better than my husband. And my husband always wanted to change his major because he's an engineering major. He wanted to do something art related one. So he actually asked me, like, you're going to go and complete your degree first. And that was actually a huge decision, he made. And I think I can relate to Maria. I mean, it's a team effort. And also there's a cultural value it play a role, because in Korea, I mean, if you are actually, married to somebody, you belong to your in-laws rather than your own like family. And it's, when I mentioned I got an offer so and so, from the university, and then my mom, first thing she said is actually, well, consult with your mother-in-law if she's okay with it. And that's actually how I had to ask my mother-in-law, like, okay, I got the offer from UW, but I mean, can I go? And she said, like, of course. And that's actually, like unusual thing. Like a lot of times, a traditional Asian value, well, you need to put husband first rather than yourself. So that was actually, huge things from my in-laws, and because of their support, I am here. And once I complete my degree, I actually, had to wait until my husband come and complete his second master in design. So now he's happy with all those, how it actually happened. But I can see that a lot of times a woman in the higher education, it actually comes with a lot of complexity. You need to balance in between family, but also, you have to have certain level of guilty, not only for like children not being there fully enough, but also maybe navigating like, oh, how's your in-laws family think about this and that, and also of course your husband, your partner. So a lot of things you need to weigh in, but yeah, somehow magically, I made it happen. So I'm here and very happy.
I'm very happy too. Anyone else? I want to ask, without, if it's okay, I wanted to ask Nicole Legate to kind of weigh in on this. What's your thoughts on?
With because of my 1-year-old.
Yeah, 1-year-old already. Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah.
And the new mama.
Yeah.
How can you talk a little bit about if it's challenging or what it's like for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's I feel like when you asked the question, I was like, I wonder what the biggest barrier for me has been. And I think, to be honest, it was the hardest thing was negotiating my starting salary. That was like the scariest thing as a woman that I think I've had to do, because it's just like I just taught about this in my psychology of gender class today. We're talking about the wage gap and all the factors involved, and there really is women they are equally good at negotiating for other people, but when it comes to negotiating for themselves, they tend to ask for less. And it's for a good reason, because they receive backlash and a lot of bad attitudes when they are assertive and ask for more. And so I really had to like psych myself up. Like, okay, you're doing this for women. When you negotiate for yourself and your starting salary, you're not just doing it for yourself, you're doing it for like we need to fix the wage gap, and you're a part of that. And so I had to it was a lot of my own fears around it, around a very real phenomenon of negotiating and being seen as too assertive, too pushy. And so that was definitely like that was a hard one for me. The baby thing happened to me much later. We kind of decided after I received tenure, like a few years later, like, okay, I think it's time. And so I feel like my career was in a really good place to be able to do that. And now, yeah, it's kind of figuring out this work-life balance that I think some of my other colleagues have gotten down a little bit more, because you have more years of doing this, but it's figuring out how can I be my best work self and my best mom self, and there's only a certain number of hours in the day, and so I'm still figuring that out, I'd say.
Yeah. Anyone else? I don't want to cut anyone off. Yeah, go ahead.
So I'm just gonna say that when I was here and and I was pregnant, there was no maternity leave at that time by the university. Like, it was the first semester that they had started putting things in place when I was about to go. So it was a little bit strange. And my department chair, I go into my department chair's office and I wanted to tell him that, I wanted to take, well, I thought I wasn't going to take the semester off from teaching. I thought I could do everything. But then luckily I had a colleague in the department whose wife had just had a baby, and he said, don't you dare, you take your time off, just get out of teaching for a semester. You're going to need it, And I went in and I said, I went into the office and I said, I have something to say. And he's like, don't tell me you're pregnant and you want a maternity, you want to take off of teaching, which I think there was, that was a little awkward, but at the same time, there was a policy in place. So that was good. I'm very lucky to have taken that time, even though I still continue to be research active, but just taking that time was really important. So I'm glad that that is in place now at Illinois Tech. So that was challenging, but then also, in terms of when I got my, my first salary, I didn't ask I said, okay, I'm fortunate to get this opportunity. I was so excited to be here and finally get the position, because there was a search and I ended up getting it, and it was very competitive. So I never asked about salaries, and I was underpaid for some time. And I did receive eventually a letter from the provost, as a new provost came in at the time. I think it was Alan Cram, that wrote a letter and said, we really value you being part of Illinois Tech, and we take this very seriously. And so they gave me a raise. But at the time, I didn't realize, I didn't know, I didn't have that mentorship, to just ask for something. So I just wanted to say that was my experience. I am happy to be here now, but I think these are issues that are getting better, I think, within the university. So it's glad to see that this transition.
Thank you. So I kind of want to touch on about, because a few of you have said it, that you didn't want to look like you were being assertive, or you didn't want to look like, I'm going to say my words, like being pushy, or like, is that, and I know because that gets attached to me sometimes unfairly, but is that's still a thing with women? And that kind of goes into my next question about when you're in certain spaces, like whether it's, faculty department meetings or wherever you're at, committees, anything that you're on, is that in the back of your mind? Like when you speak, is there still a concern about you coming off too assertive or too much? Or do we all just speak now? We don't care.
No, I guess I will only speak for me. Sometimes I'm not sure if it's just because I'm anxiously thinking about, like, oh, was that too much? Like, what did I just say? Was that taken the wrong way? If that's me, or if that's just a more generalized being a woman thing, but definitely it's in the back of my mind. How am I coming across here? And I think one challenge is that it's a very fine line, because you do have to be assertive and direct, but not too bossy or overstepping. And sometimes it's like, I'm not super sure what side of the line I'm crossing or I'm on right now. Like, am I erring too much in one side or the other? Rarely do I feel like I'm getting it just right. But yeah, I think that, like, that thoughts, like, did I just say something using the wrong tone or the wrong words to the wrong person, or was that okay? Like, that's sort of omnipresent for me. I don't know.
No, for me too. No, I thank you for sharing that. I experience the same thing. Anyone else?
Yeah, thanks for saying it like that, Alissa. That really resonates with me a lot too. Like, I think that it's internalized sexism. Like, I think, we struggle with that worry, that specific worry of coming across as too much, too pushy. I very much struggle with that. And I think that, like, as I've gotten older and, more years under my belt, I feel like I worry about that less. But certainly I still worry about that. And I think it's a broader problem, but it's very present for me as well.
I was going to say that so I work in the sort of space sciences, upper atmospheric science, and I sort of drifted here from aerospace engineering. And so I've been in a couple different professional contexts, and there's sort of a range of the percentage of women who are, say, present and active in that field or going to the conferences and things like that. So there are some where I find myself, maybe the only woman at a particular, or one of a couple in a workshop. Our department's kind of like that, but at the department at this point, it doesn't matter. So I know the faculty well enough, and after our other mentor or my mentor, other faculty member retired, I became the senior most, and I was like, well, I guess I got to set the example now. So 3 sheets to the wind. I'm going to say what I mean. But in the professional conferences and stuff, I find it's easier to share in small group format without that second guessing than ones where there are kind of larger, and the same thing is for students. So it's worthwhile to recognize that there are those temperaments, and that you have to provide that space for students who might be in that same sort of mindset. And I remember there was this transition. I think I was going to talk about this with respect to the challenges, this point where I sort of transitioned from realizing, I'm a junior faculty, I'm on some sort of, professional society steering committee, and there are student representatives there. I'm actually the one who has to set the example for them. So that motivation, where you were talking about, Nikki, about negotiating and saying, I'm not doing this for myself. I'm doing this because I need to make it easier for other people to do it. That has come more into the forefront of my mind as time has gone on, and I think that's been a good thing. I think I probably err on the side of not assertive enough generally, but I think it's getting easier. So.
Before I move on, did anyone else want to share kind of their thoughts on this?
I will say that is it in the back of it? Yes, I also think that, depending on the context, there are different ways to react to or to act in response to that, to the constant question, right? It's like the Barbie movie, like it's impossible to be a woman, right? You can, or like the students remind me all the time that it's Taylor Swift saying that if a man says something, if a woman does it, it's something else. I think there is really difficult for anybody to not feel it, to not feel the resonance on that. I think it's also like my character will be to react and to not hold back. That doesn't mean that I don't question always also like how is that coming through. Perhaps I think it depends on the culture, on the climate of the specific environment where you are called to lead or to express a position or to if it's a room like this one, they were all coffee, we can all kind of, right? But if if it's a leadership meeting where you are the only female voice, and if you add to that, like we are not only, we're complex identities, right? We also do gender, at color of your skin or religion, or you add that, and then to the labels of that come with being a woman at the angry one, or this other one, or the calculative other one. Like there are additional labels that will be attached to you, and the more homogeneous a room is in terms of a gender composition, then the more labels that will be attached to that particular women. So I guess there is multiple sort of while it is the path of a person ultimately learning to just living your gender and your identity in every location, I think it also has to do with a process of adaptation to the specific degree of homogeneity of the context in which you are asked to perform. You know, just to make the questions more complicated, right? It's not only about oneself perspectives or dispositions to have a particular attitude, but also the different contexts in which you, where you have to make those quick decisions on, you know, what's the right tone or like what's the kind of argument. So it's a kind of multiple inputs, no? The one that comes from you, knowing you're a woman and a particular kind of background, but also knowing the audience and the role within that audience. So that to me, that's an awareness I have been learning a lot about in the past 4 years. Yeah.
Yeah. I want to ask now, so I'm going off my questions a little bit, but I'm piggybacking on them, hopefully. I hear this from people of color, men and women. So when they're at an institution that does not have a high rate of people of color, they seem to get asked to put on every committee, everything. I want to know, did you ever experience that where they're just like, oh, we need a woman, come here and be on this committee? And has that changed? Do you still sometimes feel like the only reason I'm here? I mean, because I've been in spaces where they're like, oh, we got to balance this out. There's not enough women on the list. And then so now you have to be like, well, how many women faculty? Who can we go ask? But then, you know, they're all tapped out because they have been asked to serve on numerous committees, to be on numerous other activities. So how do you balance that? Is that still a thing? First of all, how do you balance that? How does that make you feel? What are your thoughts? Alyssa's smiling.
I'll kick it off and just say that I think because we're so understaffed, we're asked to be on all committees, and it's not because I'm a woman, it's just because there's no one else to do it. I don't know how others in the department feel, but like when we get a PhD student, if we want to have a thesis committee, there are only 3 industrial and organizational psychologists in the department now, and so we are all the student committees.
I appreciate that. We are low staff. Anyone else? Yeah.
I think I agree with Kristina. It's partially that. I do feel like women are less likely to say no, right? So like everybody gets asked maybe equally, but maybe I can't speak for women. I have a harder time saying no. I always feel like I'm letting somebody down. And unless I have like in my mind, like a super legitimate ironclad reason for not being available, I say yes to service requests that I probably don't need to say yes to, and that my male colleagues definitely don't say yes to. And so I think, I don't know that it's as frequent now. I mean, we have how many? 5 of us from psychology now. Like we're not being asked to be on committees, I think, because we're women necessarily, because there's enough of us. And I think that we still serve on committees and do a higher proportion of service because of that saying no piece, which plays a role.
That's interesting. I'm gonna stop there for a second because that kind of resonated with me, because I feel like with my workload, I mean, I'm not faculty, but I wanted to know if this is true. Do you feel like you have to, like, is it a part like you have to prove something, or that you can manage it all, that you, because I feel like I don't say no either. I feel like I just, whatever it is, I'll do it, I'll take it. And to the point where, did I really need to do this? And I'm wondering, is that the need to feel like we have to continuously say yes? Why is it harder to say no? Because I agree with you. I think if it was a man, they would probably like, no, I'm not doing that. I don't got time for that. But I'm just curious, does anyone else feel like that?
I was just going to add, I think related to that, I agree. I have a hard time saying no. I don't think it's intentional, but I also do feel like I am somewhat closer with my female colleagues. So if I hear that they're working on something and they need help, I'm more likely to want to step in and help because I'm aware of it, but that I'm doing a lot of things maybe behind the scenes that aren't, I don't know, I would say maybe recognized. I'm sure it's valued, but you do start to see like potentially like a gender difference in like who's doing the more menial tasks. And I don't think it's an intentional like but it just comes up somewhat naturally too by like who you're talking with, who might need help, where can I jump in? Or sometimes students, not always, but they may feel like if they're dealing with something that it can be easier to approach some of the female faculty, and then that can lead to some time and working through that. I'm not saying they don't approach male faculty, but I just sometimes see those trends happening. And I think that is playing a part too sometimes with different tasks that we're doing.
We have Maryam on the call. Thank you. Yeah. Do you want to do an introduction? And then we're just kind of talking about, I guess you would call it kind of like, do we feel obligated to say yes to things and just kind of some of the challenges that women may face? But do you want to do a quick introduction? And then...
Sure, I'll try not to stare at the screen because I am driving, but
Wow.
hi, my name is Maryam. So I'm the executive director of the Kaplan Institute. So great to be here, and I'm enjoying listening in. Sorry I'm late. I'm trying to catch a little bit of this in between two meetings. But yeah, I mean, I agree with everything I've heard so far. I don't, yeah, I think in terms of feeling like I'm invited to sit on many committees within Illinois Tech, I feel like it has more to do with, you know, the lack of a plethora of people to sit on committees than my gender. You know, it's just everyone's spread really thin. So that's my impression from, you know, my 3.5 years at Illinois Tech. And so it has less to do with gender, more to do with the fact that there's just a lot to do and very few people to do it. And yeah, it is a lot, you know, and in terms of my ability to say no to things, I don't know. I think I'm just recently feeling like I've reached some limit, but I am a yes woman, you know, and I have a can-do attitude, and I try to do everything. I balance, you know, home life and work life, and you know, take calls whenever I can to help students and, you know, lots of people. So I try to do as much as I can, but I am at you know, at a point where I found myself saying no, and I feel like I deserve it. I deserve to say no sometimes.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So oh, go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, sorry to jump in, Deanna. I just wanted to say that I think I managed to sort of be under the radar for a long time, where and I think my department chair was very you know, understanding and very protective of our time, you know, in pre-tenure and things like that in terms of the amount of service. And now I think they're judicious enough to ask about committees where I think they, you know, think I will have an interest and a stake. So now I'm, you know, I'm saying yes, but there are things that matter that are kind of, you know, they matter to me enough that I'll say yes, right? And I think that actually the pandemic sort of for me coincided with like a mid-career crisis where it was just like, you know what am I doing all this for? And I think that's helped me realize that, like, you know, time is limited. Our time here is limited. I want to spend it on the things that I want to do. And I think a lot of people sort of treat things that way, and it's for one's own mental health, maybe you know, the feeling of obligation can let it go, and for me that's been very helpful. So it's not to say that I figured it all out, but just that it's a process. It's a process, and I just sort of came to, you know what, I'm not going to travel just because people ask me to travel to this, that, and the other. I want to go if I actually want to go.
Oh, so can I add one more thing? Yes, so I agree. I mean, over time, there's actually, I get to learn how to say no, but still I don't really say no a lot of time. And because of, I am actually ethnically minor, coming from minority background and also women. And I know that, a lot of time, not a lot of time, sometimes it's very obvious I play a role as a token. Just put the checkbox, in order to meet the DI criteria, not only in the, at IIT, but in the professional organization as well. But I don't say no a lot of time because I know based on some of the research I'm doing, a lot of Asian students need to see some of the role model, playing in some of the committee. So, I just wanted to raise some visibility in certain committee, and that's actually one of the reasons why I just maybe, although it is extra time and extra commitment, I usually, I am willing to say yes to those things. And some of you mentioned that like male, female, maybe gender play role. Probably men, they can say no a lot better, feeling comfortable. And not only that, I think they have a way of saying negotiating. Like, okay, I can commit to this, but in return, I want to see this. We don't do that. Yeah, I mean, as Nikki mentioned that like, oh, my colleague is actually suffering. I wanted to help her out. So that's actually our, emotional, like, motivation to serve. So something, I think I want to learn those skills. I am not there yet, but that's actually something I've been noticing, like sitting on the table, like, oh, how can you possibly say those things? But, that's actually common, and that's actually part of culture on that table. And so maybe I'm still in the learning process, but that's actually something I wanted to put it in there.
No, I agree. I've seen other people say things, and sometimes it's women as well, and they just say it. And I could never, I want to say it, but there's always that fear. I think there's that tone fear, or that you're coming off aggressive. And then once you get labeled with that, it's really hard to remove that from your list. It's like you got a speeding ticket or something like that. Like you can't, it's really hard to remove that off your record. The names that can come with, speaking up or speaking in spaces where probably they didn't really want you to speak. You were more of just sitting there. So yeah, I appreciate you saying that. Thank you. That really resonated with me. Thank you. Maybe my questions. So kind of piggybacking on that, I want to talk about women in higher education. Where are we? And we can specifically talk about IIT, we can talk about, or Illinois Tech, excuse me, and we can talk about other universities you've seen. Where are we? Where do you think, where are the room for improvement? What do you need for support? I don't know the exact number. I should know this in my role, how many women we have as faculty. But I just want to hear anyone's thoughts of like, and what could we do to support the women who are here already currently?
So there are many stages of higher education, and I know there's a lot of variation by discipline. And I guess I don't know specific statistics for Illinois Tech, except that there's the pie chart on the, when you log into the IIT webpage of the enrollments, and I think it's about over the whole university, it's like 40-60 or thereabouts. So 40%, is that right? So one of the things that I noticed in the past couple of years, there was one of the student organizations, just to talk about something very concrete and specific, one of the student organizations initiated having like personal care products in certain of the women's bathrooms. And it had never occurred to me, but I was like, yeah, why shouldn't we have that?
Great.
And yeah, and because it seems so, it seems like it's minor, but it's also like it's a signifier that you are welcome here. We understand their particular, and I recently, so I was on leave in the fall semester for a research project where I went to McMurdo Station, Antarctica. I was doing research there in November, December, and you go there and every bathroom, I mean, this is run by NSF. They're very, it's STEM, but it's also, creating an environment that's welcoming of everyone. Every single bathroom, if there was a bathroom in the building, because they don't all have to meet, building codes of the United States and things like that, just have to make a survivable shelter. But every bathroom there did have women's care products. And many of the bathrooms they had also accommodated to be gender neutral, so you could select, and then they'd actually put them in all the bathrooms at that point, and I thought to myself, well, wait a minute, that's happening at like the, some of the premier STEM research areas in, that's set where the tone is set at even like the national level. Why can't we think about doing things like that here as well? So it was kind of eye-opening. It was like, wait a minute, here are people that, anyway, that was just one thing I've noticed.
No, I think that's a good point. And also going back to Georgia, I know she had to leave, but the conversation about maternity leave, like those things, is it a stigma? Is it like, you're pregnant? Like, how, I hope it has changed. I hope it's not an issue, but I think those are very good points. Yeah.
And I think a lot of those policies should be opt out instead of opt in, that you're automatically going to get it unless you have a specific reason to decline it. And maybe that applies for care, let's see, for spouses as well, who are the caregivers.
Mm-hmm.
No, I was just going to add to that about like maternity leave. I'm not up to date on like the newest policies. My kids are a little older, but I did feel very supported in going through that process. But at the time, so things may have changed, it did feel like that was a benefit of like faculty, particularly tenure track or tenured faculty. And there are faculty in other degree or categories or staff, and I feel, or even graduate students, where I think it's not as clear what their kind of rights are, or what they could, so I think that's an area that could be beneficial. I will say I remember even with needing to pump and everything, I was able to like work with facility, because I think I was helping with a project on weekends, and we needed access to a room, and they were really helpful to like get us a key to this private bathroom. But I think even since then, there's been more clear signage, I want to say, like for like rooms that people can use. And so things seem to be getting better. I'm sure it's not the best, but it's good to see more recognition of that.
Yeah. Thank you, Nicole. I'm going to say a few words, and unfortunately I have to leave to hop on to my next call. But yeah, well, first of all, I was getting my PhD when I had my first baby many years ago, and no, it was at a different university. But you're right, the policies for graduate students are really unclear. And luckily, I had a great PI who let me take some time off, but really, he didn't have to, which is absurd. And so, and I know when I was hiring staff, it's already, bringing in experienced people in university settings is tough, because staff salaries are kind of below industry standards. And so one way that we can bring in experienced staff is to, attract people who want to build families and need a better work-life balance, and have a lot of experience. And so I had that one candidate that qualified, and she wanted to have a baby and was looking for a better work-life balance. And she looked at our benefits here and spoke to our HR, and I don't remember what the benefits are, but for staff, they're not that great. And we lost out on a incredibly talented person. So I think that is something that we could do, that would make a difference. So I apologize, I do have to go, but it's really nice to see all of your faces. I hope we get to meet again soon.
Thank you so much for joining.
Yep.
If I can,
yeah,
well, I was gonna say thank you, Mary, for that, but Greg, I completely agree with the recommendations, and I think the improvement, also because I have to go teach at 3, but the students know that we are here together. I just wanted to say thank you, Diona, for organizing this space. And I think the recommendation is this very group. That's I think there are so many topics to go on to, not to sign us up all for another committee, the thing we were saying before, but maybe something where we can do, women in higher education cocktail hour, like once a month, something fun, something that feels like a good space for just hang out with you guys. Nikki and EJ, I just miss you much, I guess. It's like, I just feel like this is such a good group that, perhaps if we leave the kind of ways of the bureaucratic environment, then maybe those are conversations to be continued in a women's group, and more ideas will come from it. We're so happy that you are there, Diona, moving this initiative forward. I feel like I still miss Hillary. It's true that we have made a lot of progress, but there is a long way to go. Specific, like I can speak for the unit that I serve in architecture. I'm the only female directing one of the programs of the college. So there is a lot of, and of course that's why, younger faculty comes to you, and that's why students come to you, because, and that's what makes the disbalances and the numbers of committees and all those kinds of things are slightly overwhelming, because people want to feel represented and that their voices are at tables where their opinions might matter. So I feel optimistic. Like I have personally feel very lucky that there are amazing women at IIT, like, well, right here, EJ and Nikki, and then Nicole also, we work on PhD, and then there is Alicia and Wesley and all these amazing women we love at IIT, that I feel incredibly lucky that you guys are here. So in 4 years that I've been here, I've seen the progress, and that's exciting. And I think we can all recognize that yet, while we've seen progress, there is so much to do. There is so much work to do, but that comes with the optimism that in 4 years, so much change. Imagine what we can do in the next 4 years. So I look forward to, if you ever want to go ahead, put the girls drink group together, I am down. And thank you so much, Diona, for organizing, for bringing us together. And thank you all for the trust of speaking freely in this space, and the joy of seeing you before going to class. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Maria. I still want to talk about a little bit about higher education and what advice, I guess we could get, I just kind of, where are we at? Because especially if we talk about IIT, I think we have 2 women that are deans. I think 1 chair. We have maybe 2 or 3 associate deans, and I could be wrong with the numbers, so please forgive me. Do you think there's room for improvement? Do you think that that should change? Do you think, any thoughts on it? Do you think the women here are just, we're taking on too much that don't ask us to do anymore? What do you think?
Well, I think maybe we are actually, as Maria mentioned, we are making good progress, but we want to see more women's leadership. I mean, I think the 2 dean, that's good, but probably possibly more. And we want to see more role model and maybe more featured women's faculty in maybe any of the promotion material. Because I think the more women students coming in, they are looking for somebody they can feel connected to. And maybe in psychology, gender proportion is actually a little different, but I think, I'm talking about the IIT in general. So maybe we can actually make it, ourselves more visible, or maybe, more women leadership will be great.
And real quick,
And-
oh, go ahead. No, you go ahead.
Oh, I was saying, I agree. I just think having more diversity in role models too, because I feel like, yes, there's a few different women that are in higher positions, and I might have a harder time necessarily like identifying with or seeing like, could I be in that kind of role? So I think just having more exposure to more women in these, especially the high up positions, that are really the face of the university.
No, I agree with you. And I was gonna also, EJ reminded me of something I wanted to ask. How do you feel about acknowledgement or recognition? What do you feel like there's a difference between men or women? Do you feel like women kind of will, here's what I'm getting at, if I'm gonna be honest. I feel like women will work and kind of be like, oh no, don't recognize me. I'm just doing it. I'm just here. I'm just happy. But I feel like sometimes men are like right out here, like, look what I did. I did this. Everyone acknowledge me. Is that, do you find yourself kind of going back to like saying yes to everything? Do you find yourself kind of watering down your accomplishments or not celebrating them as much as you probably should?
So Diona, you actually touched that sensitive point. So it actually made me questioning, like, is it because of the me being a woman, or maybe it's something psychology in a smaller portion compared to the engineering? I mean, a lot of time I can see that I am even became more aggressive. So I'm sending my promoting material, and interestingly enough, maybe interesting timing, that's never really kick into the like a magazine or something, which is, I just feel like it's, make me second guessing myself. Is it something to do with my achievement, or maybe something to do within psychology, or whatever? But definitely I is actually, yeah, I want to see, I mean, I see the sum of the gender, or maybe that's what I meant by the women's in the leadership position, because I see that the like a men, they actually have more connection with the upper administrative, and that's easy to get the news out, and maybe they can skip some of the couple of steps and putting everything in the big newsletter, and then that will go out, instead of maybe us probably starting with the college, and maybe if you're lucky, maybe a university. So I don't know. I mean, maybe which one comes first, but I think probably having more women in the leadership position may help to promoting whatever we are doing, wonderful work we are doing here.
So maybe it's us really promoting and celebrating ourselves. Like, I think, like, really finding, because I do think you're right. I think, and this is one of the things I'm working on with marketing and communications, I want to improve. Certain people know how to position themselves and get that recognition, or like, I'm in a journal, let everyone know. But it's not, I don't believe it's equally, like, it's not, I don't believe it's across the board the same. So, and I feel like, I personally feel like sometimes if I want recognition, I feel like it's kind of like, how dare, like, it's wrong to ask, or it's wrong to, like, it feels wrong. It feels like I'm like, am I asking for attention? Am I not, like, do I need it? But then there's other people that of, like, as soon as they open their mouth, they are spitting out everything, all their accomplishments, and they make sure everybody knows it. So I don't know, is that like a personal thing, but it does feel like sometimes when you say, like, you do something and you think it should be recognized, like, how dare you, like, just be quiet. And I've kind of gotten to the point where I'm just like, whatever, I'll just celebrate myself privately, which is wrong, because I think we shouldn't do that. But so I kind of am on that line of, is it me personally, or is it wrong to be assertive and talk about yourself when there's other people who actively do it?
So I think everyone was sort of talking about leadership, and I think primarily referring to the kind of administrative line of leadership. And I think that's not necessarily the only ways of demonstrating leadership, but I will, so, there are those aspects of celebrating research and teaching and service that can also be avenues for recognition and excellence. I do think that the leadership can help with this. I mean, I've felt very supported by our chair, who specifically asks, and not to anyone, but to the department, do you have any accomplishments that happened in the last semester that you would like to, share about? And then that comes up in the department faculty meetings, and you've got a little shout out there. So I do think that it's the leadership is important for being able to be sensitive to that, and it doesn't have to be just women who are kind of playing that role either. But I feel what you're feeling for sure.
Thank you. Edoarda, do you want to introduce yourself? Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm glad you're able to join. So real quick, and I know we're winding down on time, so I'm really glad that you were able to join us. But do you want to introduce yourself and just talk about how you got to IIT? And then I'll do my
Yes, sure. So I'm sorry, I was teaching until now. So my name is Edoarda Corradi. I'm an associate teaching professor in the Department of Civil, Architectural and Environmental Engineering. And I'm also serving as the associate academic director at the Kaplan Institute. So I came to IIT as a student, actually. So I did my Master of Science here at IIT.
Nice. We've been talking about just challenges and things that we deal with as women. So I'll ask my, we just finished up talking about women in higher education, but I'm going to ask kind of my last kind of question, and wherever that takes us, I'll take us. And again, let me thank all of you for making time for this. This is great. And back to Maria's point, so it's two last questions. So the other one, how important is it to have a space for women to kind of connect? Because I was surprised we don't all know each other, probably because we're all in our own world working so hard, but how important, and I kind of want to do something in the fall kind of for the junior faculty coming on to just meet everybody. I think I kind of want to have us all meet, and hopefully in person, and do something. But how important is that support? Because I know psychology has quite a large number, is it 5, I think I heard, of faculty, women faculty, but for the other departments, where do you get your support from? Is it outside of the university, or can you talk about that? How important is that to have that piece? I think Nicole Ditchman talked about it, like to get other advice on stuff, but from people who may not be at the university, but from otherwhere. So how important is that source?
So I sort of take mentors wherever I can find them, and it's really personality and temperament, and they can be here at Illinois Tech or they can be elsewhere. I know in my earlier stages, like during my PhD, there was sort of a generation of women, even though we were in a minority, like within the research field, they kind of knew each other all really well, and then I'd kind of tag along, and that kind of helped me be like, okay, this is nice, and I even though there's a minority, I can feel there's I can see that they're all looking out for each other, and I don't know that was anything formal or that it turned into anything specific along the way. I mean, actually later on, maybe it did in terms of nominations or getting your name into a list for consideration for committee service or something like that. So that's been nice, but it hasn't been just women, because if you're, at least in aerospace engineering, if you're looking just to the women for mentorship, it's going to be few and far between sometimes.
Anyone else? Thoughts on that? I wanted to, as we wrap up, I wanted to ask you kind of what would be your advice, not only for students, but junior faculty coming to Illinois Tech, graduating from Illinois Tech, going into your respective fields. What would you tell them? What would would you tell yourself? Like, what would you tell your younger self? Like, what are things that you learned that you kind of like, okay, from now on, this is what I'm gonna do. This is what I should have done. This is kind of what. Is there anything like that? Like you wish you had of like did more of, did less of, like wasn't afraid to take a risk on?
I can go, I mean, Seebany actually, mentioned about the mentorship thing. I think maybe having multiple mentor around, it doesn't have to be women. I mean, it doesn't have to be within IIT. You can actually have a different multiple mentor based on your needs or maybe issue you want to consult with. So maybe getting more connection and looking for mentorship, that will be great, not only for the early career people, but also students as well. I think that's actually what I learned. And also those mentorship can be function as a support, network as well. So, I mean, having either mentorship network and also support network, that will be my advice for the students and also early career folks.
Thank you. Yeah, whoever wants to go next.
So I guess the range of people you were sort of describing felt overwhelming at first, but I do think there's some advice I often give my advisees, my research advisees, graduate advisees, about what I wish I had done more of in graduate school, and maybe it applies all the way across, I think, and that is just to be comfortable asking more questions. I think I lived with a lot of fear of not wanting to sound like I didn't know what I was talking about or hadn't done the reading, but being able to ask questions is actually like a right in some sense in a higher education institution, and we should be allowed, and students should feel free to be able to ask questions, right? And that I think maybe applies across the board. And it's, why are things the way they are? Or it might be, why is that problem, why do we work the problem out that way? I mean, it's sort of for a range of uses. And so that's the one thing that came to mind in response to your question, Deanna.
I love that answer. Thank you.
I just to narrow in, I love that. Yeah, I agree with that. And I would say, kind of going back to what I was talking about earlier about like just thinking about work-life balance and family. I know I was really hesitant in my interview at Illinois Tech to ask questions about that. I didn't have kids yet, but I knew it was something I probably wanted. And I remember some of you in psychology will know, I think I had an interview with Joyce and Tammy at the time, but I just kind of asked them, and I was nervous to even ask, and they were so helpful and nice. And I think it's just important, if that's something that's important to you, to just ask those questions now because you'd rather know it. If it's a place where you feel like you can't ask those questions or you're going to be looked down upon, then that's probably a place you don't want to end up being anyways. So.
I like that. Thank you. Oh, Alissa?
Yeah, so I've been trying to think about this, like what is really good advice for people. And I think so my advice would be something along the lines of like, don't let the fear of doing something wrong make you feel like you don't belong in certain spaces. So, like we talked a lot about how, at least for me, like saying the wrong thing or doing the wrong thing or being perceived in the wrong way leads to a lot of actions and behaviors and choices that we make in our careers. And I think, there are definitely times when I've leaned into that fear and like not taken a risk or done something that I think I should have probably done or would have been more meaningful to me. And so I think that would be the advice, right? So like you probably will say the wrong thing sometimes, and you probably will make mistakes because like all humans do. It has nothing to do with being a woman or gender, but don't let that feel like you don't still belong in that space doing the things that are meaningful to you.
I love that one. Thank you. All right, you get to finish it off. Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, no pressure. No pressure at all.
Well, I mean, I think I agree with everything that was said so far, and about, taking more risks, or, having mentors, being courageous about asking questions, and, really being yourself and comfortable about with your work and with your what you do. That's very important. And I think I was thinking about the questions you shared, and I know I've not been part of the conversation earlier, but I think throughout my career I was thinking about what were the challenges, and of course there have been a lot of challenges, but I feel I've also received a lot of support, both from women and men. Like, gender doesn't really, like, I've received also a lot of support. So actually, I think also recognizing that it's very important while you are, working at your career and moving forward.
I like that as well. All right, everybody. I know I have kept you very long, and I appreciate it so much. And I hope if I email you and ask you to do this again, I know Alyssa's going to say yes. I know she opened her vault. Now I know her secret. So I know I got one already. No,
I'm on your list for everything.
Yeah, I know. Boy, ask Alyssa, she'll do it. No, I think this was really meaningful, and even if people attend or watch it, I think it was just great just being a part of this conversation and hearing all of you speak and making me feel not so crazy sometimes, because sometimes you feel like you have all these thoughts and like, oh no, am I so horrible? So it was really nice to hear all of you speak. So I would like to do this again. So if you get an email from me, don't block it. Don't put it in the trash right away. But I really want to say thank you to all of you for making time. I know a lot of you had to teach and had to, squeeze this in. So I really appreciate it. So with that, I will say thank you, and you're free to go. I won't keep you any longer. I wish I could, but I won't. I know you all have lives. Thank you all so much.
Well, thank you, Diana,
Nice to
for
meet you all.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for
bringing us all
organizing.
together
Problem.
and
Thank
creating
you.
the
Thank you.
space. Yeah.
Thank you. Have a great day, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.